Rancher's Unexpected Journey. How a Curvy bride revealed love and transformed his life forever. Jake stared into the vast Montana sky, his heart as heavy as the storm clouds rolling in. The family ranch, passed down through generations, felt like an anchor dragging him deeper into a life of solitude and obligation. On the surface, he was a respected rancher, tough and reliable, yet inside, his spirit withered beneath the weight of expectations. Every sunrise dragged him into the same arduous routine, fixing fences and tending cattle, while his thoughts revolved around the looming reality of his father's declining health. He could practically hear the whispers of the townsfolk echo in his mind. Will the ranch survive? Can Jake keep it going? It gnawed at him, reining in any glimmer of hope that maybe, one day, he could carve out his own happiness. He clenched his jaw, already anticipating the burdens lined up for him. The ranch needed him, the legacy beckoned, and yet, each day felt more like a prison sentence. A murmur of despair brushed against his pride. Could he really uphold something so fragile? Each scrape and toil molded his exterior, but underneath it all, his heart teetered on the edge of abandonment and longing. No love had graced his life, only the barrenness of heartbreak and obligation. Then she arrived, Lily, a whirlwind of color and creativity. Her laughter danced in the thin air like wildflowers bursting through cracked earth. Together, they transformed the mornings spent toiling into something surreal. At first, he looked at her with skepticism. What was a city girl doing in his rugged world? But as they shared stolen moments amidst the labor, something shifted. Lily's zest pulled at his dormant heartstrings, compelling him to confront feelings he had buried long ago. For the first time, the walls he had built around himself began to tremble. Before he could fully embrace this unsettling thrill, however, the community's judgment came tumbling down upon him. Whispers of doubt tainted sweet moments shared with Lily, fracturing his resolve. Was he betraying his family's legacy, enamored by a woman so unlike those forged in his world? Questions spiraled as he battled the local gossip echoing in his mind. The internal conflict created a cacophony of anxiety, painfully clear and insistent. Torn between the world he knew and the chaotic allure of this new life, Jake felt a surge of anguish. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Back at the ranch, the tension twisted tighter as Lily unveiled her art. What had begun as a creative escape grew into a spotlight that drew the eyes of the art community. And with it, Jake's choices darkened like impending storm clouds. The ranch that once signified his heritage now flared into a battleground between continuity and change. The fundamental question loomed. Could he shatter the confines of tradition for a vibrant future with Lily? Or would he sink back into the constricting embrace of legacy and fear? Staring down the road of uncertainty, Jake felt the tempest within him churn, a collision of desire and duty. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, shadows kicked up dust around him, mirroring the chaos in his heart. He stood poised on the edge of two divergent paths, wrestling with the desire for joy, yet shackled to the legacy that had defined him. Would he keep fighting for love, or turn away from what could be the truest expression of himself? That question echoed ominously, leaving him in a heart-wrenching state of indecision, the weight of choice pressing down with relentless intensity. Jake stood motionless as dusk enveloped the ranch, the vibrant hues of sunset swallowed by the shadows lengthening across the land. The weight of indecision clung to him like the dirt of the fields he tilled. Each minute felt like an eternity as he replayed every moment with Lily, every laugh shared, every brush of her hand against his. Yet, As the world around deepened into night, his heart pulsed with anxiety. The stark contrast of his reality rushed in the ranch's demanding work awaited, as did the clingy whispers of the past. He could hear his father's voice in his head, guiding him to uphold family values, to preserve what was built over decades. A man takes pride in his work, in his lineage, the echoes reminded him. But pride had begun to feel like a prison wall instead of a source of strength. Compelled by a surge of frustration, Jake pushed past the barn doors and stepped into the yard where the stars began to reveal themselves one by one. The air was crisp with the promise of a storm, invigorating yet daunting. He needed clarity, and the only way to see through the fog of confusion was to confront his fears. But how could he reject the stern expectation of duty without losing everything he knew? In the quiet of the evening, he called to mind the image of Lily, her vibrant spirit contrasting with the gray of ranch life, her laughter an antidote to the tightness in his chest. Could he ever allow himself the kind of happiness she represented? Facing the possibility of losing the ranch was one thing. Facing the possibility of losing Lily was an entirely different battle, one that felt insurmountable. That very night, Jake found himself unable to sleep, tossing and turning in an endless cycle of thoughts. The dark room felt closed in, mirroring the emotional confines he had built. With every hour that passed, he questioned whether leaving would be an act of self-preservation or selfishness. Yet, it also stirred a fierce determination. He had resolutely nurtured the ranch, but what of his own heart? At the break of dawn, he took a long walk out to the fields, the crisp grass underfoot grounding him. These were not mere pastures. They were pieces of his identity, forged through blood, sweat, and tears. But the transformation Lily inspired within him was undeniable. She wasn't asking him to abandon his life. Instead, she urged him to reshape it. Determined to confront this crossroads, Jake decided to visit Lily's art show, hoping to catch her before the hustle of others could cloud their conversation. He needed to know if they shared the same vision of the future and intertwining of art and ranching. If she could see herself here, on this land, amidst the sweat and toil, perhaps it could work. But as he arrived, heart racing with trepidation and anticipation, a shadow loomed over him. Caleb, a childhood friend turned rival, locked eyes with him across the crowded gallery. Caleb had always embodied the success Jake felt he could never reach, yet now seemed to flaunt it, live with all the ease Jake wished he could claim. "Looks like you've got some choices to make, Jake," Caleb called out, a smirk twisting his lips. The challenge lingered in the air, thick with tension. This was at the moment had come. Jake took a deep breath, ready to step into the fray, fully aware that the decisions made here would either illuminate his path forward or deepen the shadows of doubt surrounding him. How could he seize this moment and confront both his past and the rivalrous flame that brought urgency to his choices? Each heartbeat felt like a countdown to a revelation that could change everything. With grit forged from the trials of ranch life, he walked towards the tumultuous intersection of his desires and his responsibilities, knowing he was about to face more than just a conversation. He was about to confront the essence of his identity. Beneath the strain of Ramsey's ambitions and the impending storm outside, Jake felt a flicker of resolve. The truth awaited on the other side of the threshold, and he would not back down. Would he stand his ground or cave to the influences that sought to define him? As he approached Lily, the choices converging, the air bristled with uncertainty that crackled like the sky above. Jake felt the full weight of expectation bearing down on him as he took one step closer to Lily. The gallery buzzed with animated chatter, but inside his mind, a storm brewed that made the external noise fade into oblivion. There stood Caleb, the embodiment of everything he felt he had failed to achieve, his success casting a long shadow that smothered Jake's confidence. But that when he smiled at Lily across the room, her eyes lighting up the space, sparking a flicker of determination within him. "Did you think I wouldn't show up?" he called out, attempting to mask his unease with bravado. She turned to him, and for a moment, the world's anxiety softened, replaced by the warmth of her presence. "I knew you'd come," Lily replied, her voice a soothing balm against his fraying nerves. "You always come." Underneath her warm smile, Jake sensed the weight of his choices. He had to unravel the complexities of his heart and confront the dream he dared not speak. The ranch was his life, but also a bindings that tethered him to fears of inadequacy and isolation. With every beat of his heart, he felt the urge to share his thoughts, but Caleb's presence still loomed large. "So, what are you thinking about these days?" Lily asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. This was the opportunity Jake had been waiting for, the chance to sift through the layers of his emotions. But how to articulate a lifelong battle? "Honestly, I've been thinking about the ranch, and you," he finally admitted, the words tumbling out unfiltered, "and how I want to find a way for both to fit into my life." He hesitated, unsure whether he was offering her a choice or confiding his own fears. Caleb interjected, a grin plastered on his face. "Still holding on to that relic? Sounds like you're fighting against the tide, Jake. You know, some dreams are just that, dreams." A surge of anger tightened under Jake's skin. This rivalry was not just personal. It forced him to confront the very essence of his aspirations. "Caleb, you might find it easy to chase what's shiny, but I'm not looking for quick glory," Jake responded, his voice steadier than he felt. "I've built something here, something meaningful." Lily's gaze flickered between the two men, sensing the tension. "It's not about the success you see, Caleb. It's about what fulfills you, Jake. But you have to decide what that looks like." Her words struck a chord that resonated deep within him. Jake contemplated the truth in her statement. Fulfillment and success felt like two distinct paths, but he was responsible for defining the intersection where they could meet. The chatter around him faded, and his focus sharpened. Realizing he had the power to forge his narrative rather than succumb to the fears imposed by others, he pressed on. "I need to know if there's a way for you to be part of my world," he continued, vulnerability sharpening his resolve. "I want to reshape my life, to merge what I love with who I care about. But I need to know if you're willing to explore that with me." The ambience amplified as the room held its breath, the air electric with anticipation. His heart raced. This was a risk, a challenge to both his fears and the expectations he carried. Caleb, sensing the shift, attempted to regain control with a dismissive scoff, but Jake stood firm. This was his moment, and he couldn't let it slip past, no matter the cost. As he awaited Lily's response, unsure of what directions this bold proposal might take, Jake felt the fine line between hope and anxiety buckle beneath his weight. What if she rejected this vision he was offering? Would the storm that raged inside him begin to settle, or would it intensify to a point of no return, ushering in a reckoning neither of them could ignore? He sensed the answers resting just beyond the horizon of the unknown. With Caleb lingering like a predator in the shadows, and the tremble of uncertainty echoing in his chest, Jake realized that this conversation was the catalyst for everything he wanted. But when a moment of truth finally arrived, would he be ready to embrace whatever lay on the other side of his desires? Jake's heart raced as he awaited Lily's answer, the tension coiling tightly around them like an unseen force. The air felt charged, a pulsing energy that hinted at change, an unfamiliar sensation that urged him to break free of the constraints he had imposed on himself. What if this was the moment that altered the trajectory of his life? Lily took a breath, her expression searching Jake's face for clarity. In her eyes was a depth of understanding he hadn't anticipated. She didn't just see the rancher or the dreamer, but rather the man standing precariously at a crossroads. "I appreciate your honesty, Jake," she began, her voice steady yet soft. "But what does it really mean? How can we fit in each other's worlds?" Every muscle in Jake's body tensed at the gravity of her words. Was he overstepping? His instincts screamed at him to pull back, but something deeper urged him to push forward. "I don't have all the answers," he admitted, his voice low, "but I want to find them. I need to blend the ranch with my life outside it. There's a way for you to be part of that. Isn't there?" The room felt as if it contracted around him, the buzz of conversation fading into an echoing silence that intensified the vulnerability of his admission. He could feel Caleb's eyes boring into him, a silent accusation lingering unspoken. "What do you want, Jake?" Caleb asked, feigning nonchalance, though his intent glinted ominously beneath the surface. "To play house with Lily while living in a glorified pasture?" Jake clenched his jaw, the fire in his belly igniting. "I want to live authentically, not just exist in shadows, Caleb. We chase things, we idealize them. But I want the real deal, even if it's messy." Lily nodded, seemingly unaffected by Caleb's jeering. "Messy is good," she said, her smile signaling a glimmer of trust. "Life isn't about being perfect. It's about the journey. If you're committed to this path, I'll walk it with you." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. Could it be that simple? As he met her gaze, something profound opened within him, the realization that he was worth this chance. He pondered the challenges that lay ahead. The ranch's demands were formidable, a never-ending cycle of responsibilities that often drained his spirit. But understanding the vitality he found in Lily gave him a renewed perspective on those obstacles. "Then let us figure out together," he said with renewed conviction. "I need more than the ranch. I need love, trust, and space to grow." Lily's eyes sparkled with encouragement, but Jake could sense her hesitation linger. "It might not be easy, Jake. You're asking to reshape everything." Caleb's laugh pierced through the moment, cutting like glass. "Good luck with that. Pastures are hard to transform." Each word from Caleb felt like an attempt to drag him back into self-doubt, but Jake realized he no longer had to play into the narrative that defined him. "The harder the journey, the more rewarding it could be," he countered, staring down Caleb. "That's why I'm willing to fight for this." Lily's expression shifted from concern to admiration, emboldening Jake. But as the moment thickened with promise, a wave of uncertainty gripped him once again. What if he couldn't balance both worlds? What if his pride was a barrier rather than a bridge? In the face of these surging thoughts, he felt unexpectedly invigorated. He was beginning to shape his own story, one informed not just by past patterns, but also aspirations that had remained dormant for too long. The road would undoubtedly twist and turn, but for the first time, he was prepared to embrace the reins. As the evening wore on, Caleb's taunts faded into the background, becoming mere noise amidst the burgeoning harmony between Jake and Lily. Together, they began to talk about the practicalities, visiting each other's lives, merging their interests, and even confronting their fears together. Yet, lurking in the periphery was a shared understanding. Commitment wouldn't be without its trials. The evening's glow slipped away, and with it lingered an electric uncertainty. Could their burgeoning connection withstand the tests ahead? Was he ready to confront the deeper shadows of his personal landscape? Jake inhaled, the air thick with resolve and worry, yet he felt a flicker of hope. He was ready for more than the ranch alone, ready for the unexpected journey that might not only transform his life, but redefine love itself. But just as he thought he had grasped the narrative, a sudden text buzzed in his pocket, a cryptic message from a past he thought he could leave behind. The seeds of his transformation were sown, yet his past was calling him back, demanding reckoning before he could embrace the future. Was he truly prepared for what lay ahead? Jake stepped out into the crisp night air, the coolness washing over him like a bucket of cold water. The stars glittered in the vast sky, but his heart was heavy with uncertainty. The message on his phone blinked ominously in his pocket, a reminder of an unresolved past that threatened to undermine his hopes for the future. He suspected it might be from an old business partner, someone whose intentions had grown darker with each failed venture they had shared. After processing the day's events, Jake couldn't help but feel like a stranger in his own life. As he leaned against the wooden railing of the porch, he looked out over the expanse of the ranch, each silhouette of the structures illuminated by the faint moonlight, a stark contrast to the rapidly shifting landscape of his emotions. The ranch was familiar yet alien. It held memories of success, but also the weight of expectations he felt suffocating him. Could he really balance his passion for the land, and the emerging connection with Lily? There's so much about himself left to discover, but how could he do so while being pulled back into a world that had once defined him but now felt toxic? The clangor of self-doubt echoed in his mind, urging him to retreat into the safety of the known. But then, without warning, he felt a surge of determination wash over him. He couldn't allow his past to dictate his future any longer. The ranch might provide the foundation, but it wasn't the entirety of who he was. He could be a rancher, the breadwinner, the caretaker, but also a man brave enough to confront his vulnerabilities and forge a new path with Lily. He recalled their earlier conversation, her encouraging smile illuminating the darkness of his fears. What if his past did resurface? What if the specters of poor decisions and failed partnerships shrouded his future? No, he thought, every moment spent in stagnation would only bolster the past's hold on him. He had to confront it, to take back control. In the dim light of the porch, Jake took a deep breath and longed for clarity. The message could wait a while longer. If he wanted to emerge from this unscathed, he needed to articulate what went wrong, to glean lessons, and perhaps even find a way to turn his past failures into stepping stones. He needed to prepare himself for whatever confrontation awaited him. After a restless night, he awoke with the sun, its rays spilling across the horizon like liquid gold. The warmth coaxed him from his bed, and he felt the urge to get in touch with Lily, to share his thoughts and fears, to keep the dialogue open. Living with authenticity would demand transparency. He sent her a simple message, inviting her for coffee at the local diner, hoping a casual setting would allow them to delve deeper without the pressure. It was not just about bringing their worlds together. It was also about sharing their individual journeys, their struggles, and newfound aspirations. As he drove through the familiar roads, he felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension swirling within him. The diner came into view, an unassuming building where many of his life decisions had unfolded. Would today mark another pivotal moment, or slip into the same mundane rhythm he had been chasing? Stepping into the bustling diner, the smell of coffee and sizzling bacon enveloped him. Jake surveyed the scene, catching glimpses of different lives intersecting families, friends, and couples engaged in their own narratives. Would his story intertwine with Lily's in a way that would bring them both to life? As he sat down, his mind drifted back to the message in his pocket. It buzzed again, a reminder that his past demanded attention. But as he sipped his coffee, the door swung open and in walked Lily. She smiled, her presence a beacon amidst his doubts. Jake realized that every moment held the potential for change, but first, he had to face what he left behind. With Lily by his side, he believed he could tackle any challenge. Yet within that belief also hung the fear of what might come when the past finally caught up with him. The stakes were rising, and he was about to confront more than just personal dilemmas. Shortly, he would face his past in a way he never envisioned. Would he discover closure, or would the shadows continue to loom large? The answer lay just beyond the horizon. As the door closed behind Lily, a warmth spread through Jake that contrasted sharply with his earlier unease. Her smile was radiating one that demanded his attention and drew him away from the tumult brewing inside. He felt an instinctual pull to share his fears, yet that very moment felt too potent to squander. She took a seat across from him, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Hey," she said, her tone bright. "Did you get my text?" A small nod was all he managed, caught in the sweep of emotion that accompanied her presence. It was now or never, and the weight of the message in his pocket pressed heavier than ever. "So what's on your mind?" Lily asked, sensing the shift in his demeanor. Jake took a deep breath that seemed to settle the storm within him, the aroma of the coffee acting as a grounding force. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he started, choosing his words carefully. "About us. About my past. About what I want moving forward." "Okay," Lily encouraged, leaning in as if drawing strength from him. "What do you want?" The question hung in the air, demanding introspection. He couldn't hide behind vague fantasies any longer. "I want to make this work," he said, his voice steadying with each syllable. "But I can't ignore what happened before. I can't pretend like my past won't catch up with me someday. That's brave of you to say, she replied, empathy flickering in her expression. But you're not that person anymore, Jake. You have a chance to redefine who you are. Her words hit him with a ferocity he hadn't anticipated. He had been so consumed by fear and doubt that he hadn't considered the possibility of transformation as a potent tool. Jake felt the thrill of resolve washing over him, a mosaic of new resolve forming amidst the fracture lines of his insecurities. I made mistakes, he reiterated, trying to clarify his moral ground. But I want to learn from them. I want to turn my failures into lessons instead of chains. Exactly, Lily affirmed, her eyes steady on his, igniting a confidence he once thought suffocated under remorse. We can do this together. But first, you need to communicate what you need from me. We all have baggage, Jake. He hesitated, grappling with the contours of vulnerability. There's this message in my pocket, he finally confessed, fishing out his phone and placing it on the table as if it were an unwanted talisman. It's from my old business partner, the one who kept dragging me into ventures that didn't pan out. He wants to talk. Then you should, she replied without hesitation. Face him. Don't let him dictate your narrative any longer. Her encouragement bolstered him, but unease still coursed through his veins. The confrontation loomed like a storm cloud, inevitable and unforgiving. Still, he could feel the gears of determination engaging in his chest. With renewed purpose, he turned to focus back to their conversation, realizing that sharing his burden might embolden not only him, but strengthen their bond. I don't want the past to cloud our future, he confessed, his voice now softer but unwavering. What if he makes it hard? What if it complicates things more than they already are? Trying to disrupt the cycle of fear, Lily reached across the table, placing her hand atop his. You're not alone in this. Face him, and we'll navigate it together. I'm not going anywhere. His heart swelled at her unwavering support, yet a gnawing fear remained. What if this didn't in the way he hoped? What if the confrontation resurrected ghosts better left buried? Jake decided to push those thoughts away. If he silenced his doubts and faced the confrontation ahead, there remained potential for growth. After all, stepping into uncertainty was where authentic transformation began. I'll do it, he said, a newfound resolve settling like a coat of armor around him. I'll confront him, and I'll tell him I'm done being defined by my past. As they finished their coffee and discussed plans for the ranch, Jake felt an unfamiliar clarity. He had shifted from viewing the past as a weight to recognize it as a crucible for growth. However, with a confrontation on the horizon, he understood that determination wasn't the same as invulnerability. By the time he left the diner feeling empowered yet anxious, he questioned what facing this pivotal moment might truly reveal about himself. And deep down, he couldn't silence the stirring fear that echoed through him. Did he truly have the strength to withstand the fallout? The moment to face his past and all that it entailed was fast approaching, shrouded in uncertainty. The hours leading up to the confrontation felt stretched, as if time itself had conspired to amplify his anxiety. Jake busied himself with mundane tasks at the ranch, trying to find solace in the routine of feeding animals and mending fences. Yet each chore reminded him of the storm he was about to navigate. The message from his old partner buzzed in the back of his mind like an unwanted fly, the impending conversation a weight he couldn't shake off. He had made plans with Lily for dinner that evening, but the closer it got to that time, the more his stomach churned. What if everything reverted to the chaos of his past? What if the questions he had to answer were beyond his readiness? His internal debate became a cruel joke. How could he advocate for his own future when he was still shackled by the failures of his past? Around 5, as the golden light began to lick the edges of the ranch, he found himself staring out at the rolling hills that stretched endlessly in front of him. In that silence, he reflected on who he was today, a man who yearned to break free from the mold cast by missteps and bad decisions. But those mistakes whispered in his ear, reminding him of the vulnerability he felt whenever he stepped into the public eye of the judgments, the failures, and the uncertainty of acceptance. With a determined huff, He pulled out his phone. Each ring of the dialing tone felt like a countdown. The anxious pounding of his heart matched only by the voice of his old partner, Derek, echoing through his mind. Derek had never seen Jake as anything more than a resource, a stepping stone, and he worried if this meeting would reinforce that perception. As soon as Derek picked up, Jake's planned opening words felt cheap and rehearsed. "We need to talk." Simple yet heavy, the phrase hung in the air, and he could almost hear the gears turning in Derek's head. "Of course, mate. I've been wanting to connect." Derek's voice dripped with a charm that used to disarm him. "How about tomorrow at the diner, like old times?" Jake's resolve faltered momentarily. Old times might have been comfortable, but they were also precisely what he wanted to escape. "No diner. I'll meet you at my place." The firmness in his voice surprised him, and he felt a flicker of hope. "Your place?" "Sounds like someone's feeling bold." Derek laughed, but Jake sensed a threat encased in that mirth. Maybe bold was what it would take to reclaim his narrative. The very notion of him holding the power shifted something inside. As he ended the call, anticipation mingled with primal fear. It was a beginning of sorts, a determination forged in seconds of resolve. When he returned to the house for dinner with Lily, the initial thrill of her presence soothed his nerves like medicine. They set the table together, laughing over small jokes and cherished memories, but a heavy silence loomed in the background. Jake was a wreck of thoughts, his heart ready to spill over while simultaneously feeling the weight of impending doom. "Jake, what is going on? You seem distracted," Lily inquired, her eyes piercing through the facade. His fingers played nervously with a napkin, unease tingling along his spine. "I'm about to confront someone from my past," he admitted, vulnerability spilling into the open like an unguarded wound. "It's about some unfinished business, my old business partner, Derek. Tomorrow I face him." Lily's expression softened with understanding as she reached across the table to hold his hand. "That is a big step. Just remember, whatever happens, you have the power to shape the outcome." The night wore on, filled with silent support and a shared determination to break the chains binding him to his past. Each moment of connection became a testament to his growth. He was not the same man who had once let Derek dictate his value. He was now in control, drawing strength from the courage he was finding within himself. When they finally retired for the night, Jake felt raw yet invigorated, his stomach still churning. He lay awake, envisioning the confrontation yet to come, his determination, crystallizing into a commitment that felt palpable. As he surrendered to sleep, one question remained. Would he emerge transformed or merely redefined by the very scars he was trying to erase? The next day, Jake would either claim his future or again tread the path of his past. And as dawn broke over the ranch, he realized something profound. The real confrontation wasn't just with Derek, but with the parts of himself he had not yet mastered. In that realization, he found an unexpected reservoir of courage that could change everything. The morning sun hit Jake's face with an urgency that matched his racing heart. He rolled out of bed and faced the mirror, a familiar ritual now laced with new significance. Each morning had previously been a simple act of preparation, but today felt different. As he washed his face, he caught a glimpse of a man not just trying to maintain an image, but actively forging his identity. Vulnerability ran deep, but so did determination. He dressed quickly, mindful of time, but there was a calmness in his movements, a sense of purpose fueling his actions. Each button fastened, and each boot laced represented a step towards the confrontation ahead. This wasn't just about meeting Derek. It was about standing tall in the face of everything Jake had allowed himself to be molded into. As he secured his lasso to the saddle, he recalled the way old wounds had shaped him completely, but they wouldn't define him anymore. The air was crisp as he stepped outside, the ranch alive with morning activity. Horses whinnied, roosters crowed, and the smell of fresh earth reminded him of the hard work he had always valued. For so long, he had built his worth around those tasks, but this would be different. Today, he was preparing for a different kind of labor, the labor of reclaiming his narrative. Jake found himself pacing in front of the main barn, nervously checking the time. He could feel the weight of every second ticking by, bringing him closer to a confrontation he couldn't avoid. Could he maintain his newfound strength? Could he show Derek that he wasn't just a resource anymore? It was time for Jake to articulate who he was to the world, not just Derek. As he walked back towards the house, he spotted Lily through the kitchen window. She hummed softly while pouring coffee, and just seeing her calmed his jagged nerves. The strength she offered him was another layer of protection against the storm he sensed waiting outside. He stepped inside, smelling the rich aroma of coffee and something baking. "Big day ahead?" she asked, glancing up as the sunlight caught her hair. "Yeah," he replied, the word feeling heavy on his tongue. "This might change everything." Lily paused, concern flickering in her eyes. "Just remember, you control the narrative, Jake. No matter what he says or does, you get to decide who you are moving forward." Her words ignited something within him. He was finally letting go of the constraints that came with his past. He wasn't just confronting an old partner. He was confronting the part of himself that still feared judgment, and that weighed each failure heavier than necessary. The thought of facing Derek loomed on the horizon like storm clouds as Jake finished his coffee. He took a moment and breathed deeply, feeling the air fill his lungs. It was time to forge a new path, one driven by assertiveness rather than fear. As he mounted his horse, he focused on the road ahead rather than the weight of history. With every stride, Jake moved forward with a clarity that had evaded him for so long. This would not be a battle of words alone. It was a challenge of conviction. He felt the power behind his choices swell with every beat of his horse's hooves against the earth. Arriving at his place, Jake's heart raced with a mix of eagerness and dread. The porch steps loomed before him like the edge before a great leap. Could he finally confront his past while forging a path that embraced his future? The moment he saw Derek's familiar silhouette, Jake's resolve galvanized. He could feel every doubt, every hesitation trickle away as he approached. The man standing before him was no longer the frightened version of himself. Today, he stood as a man determined to claim the narrative of his life. "What do you want, Derek?" Jake called out as he drew closer, the words flying from his lips like an arrow, striking with conviction. Inside, he screamed. The time had come to face not just Derek, but the relentless shadow of his past as well. What would happen next would determine whether he remained a prisoner of those shadows or began a new chapter of his life. Derek turned slowly, regarding Jake with an expression that combined surprise and a hint of amusement, as if the man before him was a distraction from the real world. The corner of his mouth flicked upward, but Jake saw through the facade. This was a man who thrived on control, and Jake had come to reclaim his own. "What do I want?" Derek echoed, his voice smooth like oil. "I want what's mine." Jake's heart raced. The implication of those words settled heavily in the air between them. Derek meant power, dominance, and the ability to dictate Jake's life choices. Jake clenched his fists, fighting against the instinct to recoil. This was the moment he'd prepared for, yet the reality stung more than he anticipated. "Let us get one thing straight, Derek," Jake replied, forcing the determination to resonate in his voice. "What you think you own doesn't define who I am anymore." The surprise on Derek's face was fleeting, quickly replaced by a calculated calm that sent a chill through Jake. "You think you could just walk away? After everything we built together?" Jake took a slow, deep breath. The weight of their shared past pressed on him. The memories of hard work shared and dreams realized in tandem threatened to throttle his resolve. Yet he pressed on. "You misunderstand. What we built is not the same thing as what you tried to control. I was your partner, not your pawn." Derek stepped forward, invading Jake's personal space with an assurance that could easily tip into threat. "And now you think you can just claim independence? Good luck with that." The words dripped with a sinister undertone, but Jake stood his ground, keenly aware of the shift in dynamics. He realized this was more than a confrontation. It was a chance to redefine his own power dynamics. For the first time in years, he felt the gravity of his own choices, their intricacies unraveling with each spoken word. He wasn't naive. He understood the risks. Yet for every challenge Derek posed, a deeper conviction burned within him. "I'm not backtracking," Jake asserted, a sudden clarity washing over him. "You and I were never on equal footing, and I let you decide my worth for far too long. No more." As the words left his mouth, Jake felt a surge of freedom, an electrifying release that came with acknowledging his own strength. Derek's expression shifted, frustration flickering like wildfire. "You think telling me you're done is enough? It's not that simple, Jake. The world doesn't work that way." Every word was an attempt to revert him back to the frightened man who cowered in the shadows. But now, with the support of his choices and Lily's faith in him, Jake felt fortified against the storm Derek represented. "Of course it's not that simple," Jake countered, his voice unwavering. "But I have to start somewhere. This isn't just a conversation. This is about taking back my life. I'm walking away from whatever you think I owe you." Silence hung in the air. It felt monumental, filled with the weight of their history. Derek studied him, searching for cracks, a sign of vulnerability that favored the past rather than the present. But with every second that passed, Jake stood a little taller, resolute in his decision to break free from the chains of obligation. "But you will learn," Derek said slowly, a hint of malice threading through his tone. "There are consequences to every action, Jake." "Then let those consequences come," Jake replied, striding backward, ensuring there was a gap between them, a space filled not with fear, but with newfound courage. At that moment, any doubt that lingered dissolved. Jake turned to leave, taking thoughtful steps toward the path in front of the ranch. As he walked away, he thought about the next steps he needed to take. Jake realized this confrontation was only the beginning of his journey toward redefining his life and standing tall in the face of adversity. But the thought of Derek's potential retaliation lingered ominously behind him, a silent specter of his past demanding to be addressed. What further challenges awaited? Would Derek carry out his threats? And, more importantly, was Jake prepared for the unfolding complexities of newfound freedom and responsibility? Jake stood at the edge of his ranch, the sun dipping low behind the sweeping Montana horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple. He felt renewed, vibrant with the clarity that had emerged from yesterday's confrontation with Derek. The weight that had shackled him for so long began to lift, and he realized he stood not just on his land, but at the precipice of a newly defined identity. He had faced his past, confronted a rival who had treated him as less than equal, and emerged victorious, claiming his narrative rather than succumbing to the weight of another's expectations. The boldness within him ignited like a wildfire, illuminating paths that had once seemed insurmountable. He recalled the triumphant dialogue that surged between him and Derek. The exchange had not merely been an ending, but a vital beginning, the inception of his transformation. He was no longer the frightened rancher burdened by ancestral expectations. He was now a man guided by a fierce desire for authenticity, willing to embrace both the challenges and joys that lay ahead. In the days that followed, Jake threw himself into reshaping his life, intertwining his passion for the ranch with newfound aspirations that extended beyond its borders. He found a renewed joy in the land. Every blade of grass became a testament to both his labor and the responsibilities he had chosen to shoulder. But something had shifted. He began to envision the ranch not just as a heritage, but also as a canvas for his dreams. He worked side by side with Lily, cultivating the land and nurturing their partnership. Her art had found a place on the ranch, once merely a backdrop. It now breathed life into every crevice of his existence. Together, they began hosting weekend gatherings, where art mingled with the beauty of ranch life, inviting the community to celebrate the soft yet vibrant layers of both worlds. It was during one of those events that recognition of his growth crystallized. As attendees wandered through the gallery, the walls adorned with Lily's paintings and photographs of life on the ranch, Jake stood to the side and watched. He saw people engage, the conversations spilling over with creativity and gratitude. No longer did he dwell in the shadows, he was now a part of something expansive, something that resonated with both the rustic beauty he held dear and the authenticity he craved. Lily approached him, her smile as brilliant as the galleries they had opened. "You've really transformed, Jake," she said, admiration dancing in her eyes. "This was your vision all along." He turned to her, his heart swelling with a profound sense of recognition. "I finally understand what it means to shape my own life," he replied, the confidence in his voice reflecting how far he had come. He felt the weight of her love and unwavering support, a foundation upon which they were building a future together. As the evening wore on and the sun set, painting the sky with violent colors of dusk, Jake took a moment to step outside. The chill of the air was a refreshing reminder of the work ahead. He had achieved, conquered, and transformed. And outside, as the stars shifted into view, he recalled the moments of fear and doubt, the struggles that had morphed into opportunities for growth. Jake realized that he was not merely defined by the ranch or its legacy. He had taken ownership of his journey, emerged as a competent leader of his own narrative, and forged a pathway for the future, bold and brightly lit. The commitment to his dreams, the merging of love, land, and art was now undeniably carved into the very fabric of his existence. This experience had sculpted not just the ranch and the relationships surrounding it, but forged his individual identity into something solid and admired. Jake felt profound satisfaction, knowing that he had truly achieved both self-acceptance and a future built upon resilience and passion. As cool winds brushed against his skin, he committed to taking each day as a new endeavor, one driven by purpose and aligned with a broader vision. He unlocked his heart and mind to a world brimming with possibilities. The moment he had awakened to clarity was more than a fleeting change. It had blossomed into sustained self-acceptance and success. Jake stood tall, fully embracing the lessons learned and the triumphs achieved. And as he gazed across the expanse of his land, he understood that he had finally become the man he was always meant to be. This is where you come in. You need to subscribe now to our channel for more exclusive stories of personal transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button and feed the algorithm. Leave a comment to let us know your reactions and theories about Jake's journey. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Join us in celebrating personal victories and the construction of beautiful lives. Your support makes a difference.